Okay, so we're going to do sum and product rule. Now, so far, all the problems that we've done, I've given you a quadratic equation, and you have found the roots for me. Okay, and there's lots of different ways. You know, by graphing, quadratic formula, complete the square, all the different ways. But today we're going to do it a little different. I'm going to give you actually the answers, and you're going to give me the original quadratic formula. Okay, so I'm going to start off with just something basic to talk to you about where it came from. So if I have x squared plus 7x plus 12 equals 0, we'll start with this. And I just want to show you how this works with an easy problem. Okay, so if we were going to factor this, we would get x plus 4 and x plus 3. So then our two answers would be -4 and -3. That would be our two roots, correct? Now, guys, we got the roots by, remember when you make a t-chart, sometimes you get them by adding and multiplying. So you can go the other way. In other words, for example, okay, if I was trying to, if I had -4 and -3, okay, I need to come up with a 7, and I would need to come up with a 12 to get this quadratic, right? Well, if I'm taking a look at both of these, if I just change the sign and add them together, so if I change the sign of both of them, right, 4 plus 3 is going to give me the 7 that I was looking for. Right, there it is. 4 plus 3 gave me 7. Right, I changed the sign and I added them. And there's your middle term. If you change the sign and you multiply them, what's 4 times 3 going to give us? 12. Right? So to get your middle term, we could just change the sign, 4 plus 3, and I got 7. That gives us our linear term, our middle term. To get our constant, our c, all we had to do is change the sign and multiply them. 4 times 3 is 12. Right? So you can work backwards. And it works every time. So let's do some problems like that. And some of them are really easy like that one, and then they get harder. Because not always are our answers pretty, right? They're always whole numbers. So write a quadratic equation with the given root. Number 1. So if I give you 7 and -4, so in other words, I'm telling you that 7 and -4 are answers to a quadratic equation. Okay? That's the roots. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to work it backwards. I want you now to find me what was the original equation. And remember, if you go back to here, we changed the signs and added them to get our linear term. We changed the signs and multiplied them to get our constant. So we're going to do the exact same thing. So to find the sum, we'll use the s for the adding for the middle term. We're going to change the sign, so I want -7 plus, because we're adding, 4. And -7 plus 4 is -3. So that's the middle term. We're going to have -3x. Then we're going to take the product. And once again, you change the sign, right? So I want -7 times 4, right? Which is -28. That's the constant. So you should use that, you just worked them backwards. So your answer is x squared minus 3x minus 28. It asks for an equation, right? So we said equal to what? 0. Excellent. Okay, now for number 2. I'm going to give you 2 problems, this time they're fractions. So 3/2 and -1/3. In other words, our 2 roots to a quadratic are 3/2 and -1/3. And your job is to come up with the equation it came from, right? So you want to come up with the original equation. So we got to find the sum, and we have to find the product. So the sum just comes from taking the opposite. So -3/2 plus a +1/3. We don't have a don't have a common denominator, so you can use your calculator or you can get a common denominator, but you're going to get a common denominator and add them together. So you end up with what? You get negative 7/6. So that's the middle term. Now let's go with the product. Remember, you change the sign. So we want negative 3/2 times 1/3. Guys, when you multiply fractions, you don't need a common denominator. You just multiply straight across, numerators, denominators, right? So you end up with negative 3/6, which is negative 1/2. So then our answer would be x squared minus 7/6x minus 1/2 equals 0. That's not in the right form. So what are we gonna do to put it in the correct form? Good, multiply the whole thing by 6. So you end up with 6x squared minus 7x minus 3. Number 3. Okay, so sometimes the answers, as you know, are not quite that pretty. So here's one that looks like, what kind of root would this be? What would they be called?
Irrational.
Right. Okay, so we're going to do we're going to do sum and product. Now, if you write this problem out, it's really two different answers. It's 2 plus root 3 and 2 minus root 3. And you have to change the sign of the problem, right? So what I really have then is the sum of a negative 2 minus root 3, right? I have to change both signs. I'm changing the whole thing. Right, I'm going to multiply this by negative 1, so it changes both signs. Plus, I'm going to add to that, and I'm going to change both of these signs. So you get negative 2 plus root 3. So in other words, we have a negative 2 minus root 3 and a negative 2 plus root 3. Okay, I know there's parentheses around this, but actually all we're doing is just, it's an addition problem, so we're just combining like terms. So if you want to drop the parentheses and rewrite it, you can, but there's no reason to do that if you don't want to. You just need to look at it and combine like terms. What happens to the negative root 3 and the positive root 3? They cancel. And then, or you can do it here, they cancel. And a negative 2 and a negative 2 make negative 4. So that's your middle term, negative 4x. Now we have to find the product. And guys, every time, just because these numbers look messy, they're always going to clean up and look good. Okay? So now we're going to multiply. You have to remember, you have to take the opposite signs, which you've already done that right here. So I would want a negative 2 minus root 3 times a negative 2 plus root 3. Now, we've learned before, these are binomials, but they're special binomials. What kind of binomials are they? Good, they're conjugates, right? And if I FOILed this out, if I distributed this, my middle terms are always going to be opposite, aren't they? They're always going to cancel. So what's the shortcut way of multiplying binomials that are conjugates? In other words, they're exactly the same with just a different sign in the middle. What's the shortcut? First and what? Last. That's the shortcut. You can FOIL it out if you want. Okay, the middle terms will cancel every time. Okay, or you can just do the shortcuts. You're going to multiply the first together. So negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. Right, and then you're going to multiply the lasts together. What is a root 3 times root 3? It just drops the radical, doesn't it? Root 3 times root 3 is just 3. And there's a negative, so it's actually going to be minus 3. So negative root 3 times root 3 drops the radical, it's just negative 3. So 4 minus 3 is 1. My answer then would be x squared minus 4x plus 1 equals 0. And you're done. 4. Negative 3 plus or minus 7i. If we want to turn this into a quadratic equation, right? They're giving us the answers, and our goal is to turn it back into a quadratic. So this is actually negative 3 plus 7i and negative 3 minus 7i. So to find it, you need to find the sum and product of your answers. But you have to take the opposite first. So we want 3 minus 7i plus 3 plus 7i. Okay, you're just adding, so just combine like terms. So the 7i's are going to cancel, and 3 plus 3 is 6. Now for the product, multiply those two together. 3 minus 7i times 3 plus 7i. This time you're multiplying binomials together that are conjugates. In other words, they're exactly the same, the only difference is the sign in the middle. You can FOIL it, but the middle terms will just always cancel. So the shortcut is firsts, which would be 3 times 3, which is 9. And then look at the lasts. Okay, we want a negative 7i and a positive 7i. That's going to give us negative 49i squared. Do you guys remember the value of I squared? Negative 1, excellent. So this is actually going to be plus 49, right? That's what that really is. So together they make 58. So x squared plus 6x plus 58 equals 0 would be your final solution. Okay, number 5. Okay, number 5 gets a star because it's a little harder. I'll do 2 like it. Negative 3 plus or minus 2 root 7 over 4. The reason it's harder is because it's a fraction, okay? And the idea, though, is exactly the same, okay? I've got a negative 3 plus 2 root 7 over 4, and a negative 3 minus 2 root 7 over 4. You do not have to write this part. I'm just, for notes, showing you what I have. But I have to find the sum and product, so you got to change the signs. So I want 3 minus 2 root 7 over 4, all of that, plus 3 plus 2 root 7 over 4. Okay, this is a fraction, right? Do they have a common denominator as they are?
Yes.
Yes. So however many fourths, right, plus however many fourths still equals a fourth of something. Do y'all see that? Okay, so now then we've taken care of the denominator. They had common denominator, it's easy. Let's look at the numerator. And in the top, I'm adding. So when we add, we just combine like terms. What happens to the 2 root 7 and the negative 2 root 7? What do they do? Right, they're going to cancel. So we just have 3 plus 3 is 6. So you end up with, it reduces to 3 halves. Okay, for those of you maybe who didn't see that, I want to show you one other way of looking at this. Another way of looking at it's a lot longer, but it's still good to understand. I could have rewritten this. This is the same thing as 3 over 4 minus, right? This 4 applies to both things. So minus 2 root 7 over 4, plus this applies here, so plus 3 over 4, plus 2 root 7 over 4. It's just a lot longer. That 4, though, you have to recognize goes with both, which is the reason sometimes when you guys try to cancel and you can't, that's why. So then these would have canceled and used 3/4 plus 3/4 is 6/4. Okay, now let's go to product. You're going to take both of these and multiply them together. Right, when you multiply fractions together, you do the same thing on easy fractions. You multiply the tops and you multiply the bottoms. So the bottom on this is easy. What's 4 times 4?
16.
16.